The village of Santa Cecilia nestled close to the Rio Grande. The river was a source of life. Yet, its gentle currents also carried a chilling legend. The villagers whispered of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a specter forever searching for what she had lost. The elders spoke of her mournful cries echoing through the night. They said she was the spirit of a woman who had drowned her children. Now she wandered the riverbank, her cries a chilling lament. They warned the young to never go near the water's edge after dark. For La Llorona's sorrow was a hungry thing. It could easily claim the living as its own. Her name was Maria. She had once been a woman of vibrant beauty. Her laughter had been as bright as the sun on the river. But tragedy had a way of stealing joy. It had come for Maria, leaving behind only a chilling emptiness. She had lost her husband to a senseless accident. Grief became her only companion. Then, one night, she took her 2 young children to the river. The moon painted the water silver, masking the darkness beneath. She waded into the current, her children clinging to her. The river accepted them all. Some say it was an accident. Others claimed it was the work of despair. Generations had passed since Maria's death, yet the legend of La Llorona remained. It was a story woven into the fabric of Santa Cecilia. Mothers used it to hush their children. Old men spoke of it in hushed tones. La Llorona was more than a tale. She was a warning whispered on the wind. The villagers knew the signs, the sudden chill in the air, even on the warmest nights, the rustle of unseen fabric near the water, and then the cries. A mournful wail that seemed to claw its way up from the depths of the river. It was a sound that sent shivers down their spines. It was a reminder of the sorrow that lingered in their midst. Sophia was a child of 10 summers. Her eyes held the boundless curiosity of youth. She had grown up hearing the stories of La Llorona. But Sophia was a child of reason. She didn't believe in ghost stories, at least not until that fateful night. It was the eve of Dia de Muertos. The air vibrated with the scent of marigolds and the promise of rain. Sophia had wandered down to the riverbank. She was drawn by the hypnotic rhythm of the water. As she sat there, she noticed a glimmer of white in the distance. It moved with an unnatural fluidity. Curiosity warred with fear in her small chest. She called out, her voice barely a whisper against the growing wind. "Hello?" Her voice was swallowed by the rustling leaves. The figure in white seemed to glide towards her, its form obscured by the gathering shadows. The girl's heart hammered against her ribs. She called out again, her voice laced with a tremor of fear. "Hello?" This time the figure paused. It turned towards her, and the girl felt a chill grip her soul. The last rays of the setting sun illuminated the figure's face. It was a woman. Her skin was as pale as moonlight, her eyes hollow pits of sorrow. She moved with an unearthly grace. Her voice, when she spoke, was a hollow rasp that sent chills down the girl's spine. "Why are you here, little one?" The girl stumbled back, fear a knot in her throat. She wanted to run, to scream. The darkness around her seemed to close in, suffocating her with its weight. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle of leaves a whisper of something sinister. But her feet felt rooted to the spot. It was as if the very ground beneath her had turned to quicksand, trapping her in place. She could feel the cold, damp earth seeping through her shoes, anchoring her to the spot. The woman in white took a step closer. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost as if she were savoring the moment. The air around her seemed to shimmer, distorting the space between them. As she did, the wind picked up, swirling around them like a living thing. It howled and moaned, carrying with it the scent of rain and something else, something ancient and decayed. The trees around them bent and swayed, their branches clawing at the sky. The first drops of rain began to fall, cold and heavy on the girl's skin. Each drop felt like a tiny dagger, piercing through her clothes and chilling her to the bone. The rain quickly intensified, turning into a torrential downpour that blurred her vision and soaked her to the skin. She was just watching the river. Her voice was barely a whisper, lost in the roar of the storm. She could hardly hear herself over the pounding rain and the howling wind. The woman tilted her head, her dark eyes boring into the girl's. They were like twin voids, endless and consuming. The girl felt as if she were being pulled into them, drawn into their depths. The river is no place for a child, especially not tonight. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, but there was an edge to it, a warning that sent shivers down the girl's spine. "Don't you know who I am?" The question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. The girl's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation, but she could only come up with one answer. The girl could only shake her head, her breath caught in her throat. The woman let out a low, mournful cry that echoed across the water. It was a sound filled with sorrow and longing, a cry that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. It was the same cry the girl had heard in her nightmares. Those dreams had always left her waking in a cold sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. Now, faced with the source of those cries, she felt a terror unlike anything she had ever known. "I am La Llorona, and I am looking for my children." Her words were like a knife, cutting through the storm and piercing the girl's heart. The legend of La Llorona was one she had heard many times, a tale told to scare children into behaving. But now, standing face to face with the ghostly figure, the girl realized that the stories were true. La Llorona was real, and she was standing right in front of her. The storm broke with a fury that shook the very foundations of the village. The wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, and the rain fell in relentless sheets, drenching everything in its path. The villagers huddled in their homes, praying for the tempest to pass. But the storm showed no signs of abating. The river, once a source of serenity, now raged and churned, its waters reflecting the tormented sky above. The normally placid surface was now a maelstrom of frothy waves and swirling currents, threatening to overflow its banks and consume the land around it. Trees along the riverbank bent and swayed, their roots straining against the force of the water. Sophia, trapped in the throes of a nightmare that was all too real, found herself drawn back to the riverbank, compelled by a force she couldn't comprehend. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood there, the cold rain soaking through her clothes. She had heard the legends, the whispers of La Llorona, but she had never believed them, until now. Through sheets of driving rain, she saw her, La Llorona, the ghostly figure of the woman in white, a spectral presence that seemed to float above the raging waters. Her long dark hair clung to her face, and her eyes glowed with an eerie light. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she realized that the stories were true. The woman stood waist-deep in the churning water, her white gown billowing around her like a shroud. But something was different. This was not the vengeful spirit Sophia had heard about. There was a sadness in her eyes, a deep, aching sorrow that seemed to reach out and touch Sophia's soul. Gone was the sorrow that had etched lines on her face. The ghostly woman's expression was now one of calm, almost serene. It was as if she had found some measure of peace, even in the midst of the storm. Sophia felt a strange sense of connection to her, as if they were bound by some invisible thread. In its place was a look of desperate longing, a yearning that seemed to transcend time and space. Sophia could feel the weight of it, the depth of the woman's pain and loss. It was a longing for something that had been lost, something that could never be reclaimed. And clutched in her arms, she held a child, a small, fragile figure that seemed out of place in the midst of the storm. The child was silent, its eyes wide and unblinking, as if it were in a trance. Sophia's heart ached at the sight, and she felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and help. A child that shimmered with an otherworldly light. The glow was soft, almost ethereal, casting a gentle radiance that contrasted sharply with the darkness of the storm. It was as if the child were a beacon, a glimmer of hope in the midst of the chaos. Sophia knew that she had to do something, but she didn't know what. All she could do was stand there, watching, as the storm raged on around them. Sophia watched, paralyzed by a mixture of fear and a strange, unsettling empathy, as La Llorona cradled the child. The night was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the soft, mournful cries of the ghostly figure. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the sorrow that seemed to hang in the air. The woman hummed a lullaby, a melody both haunting and heartbreaking. It was a song that seemed to carry the weight of centuries, a tune that spoke of love lost and dreams shattered. The notes floated through the night, wrapping around Sophia like a cold embrace. It spoke of a love that transcended death itself, a love so powerful it defied the boundaries of the mortal world. Sophia could feel the depth of the woman's pain, a sorrow so profound it seemed to seep into her very soul. It was a love that both terrified and captivated Sophia. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the spectral scene before her. The ghostly woman, with her flowing white dress and sorrowful eyes, seemed to be a part of the river itself, an eternal presence bound to its dark waters. As suddenly as it had begun, the storm abated. The wind died down, and the rain ceased its relentless assault. The air grew still, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. The clouds parted, revealing a sky awash in the ethereal glow of the full moon. The moonlight bathed the river in a ghostly glow, illuminating the spectral figure and her child. It was a scene of otherworldly beauty, a moment frozen in time. La Llorona turned, her gaze locking with Sophia's. In those eyes, Sophia saw a depth of sorrow and longing that words could never capture. It was a look that spoke of endless nights spent searching, of a heart forever broken. In that moment, Sophia saw not a monster but a mother consumed by grief. A mother who had lost everything and was doomed to wander the earth in search of her lost child. The realization hit Sophia like a wave, filling her with a profound sense of empathy. A mother forever bound to the memory of her loss. The weight of that sorrow was almost too much to bear, and Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to reach out, to offer some comfort, but she knew it was impossible. With a final, heart-wrenching cry, La Llorona vanished beneath the swirling current. The sound echoed through the night, a haunting reminder of the pain that would never fade. Sophia watched as the water swallowed the ghostly figure, leaving only ripples in its wake. The child, the source of the otherworldly light, disappeared along with her. The river returned to its dark, silent state as if nothing had ever happened. But Sophia knew she would never forget what she had seen. The memory of La Llorona and her sorrowful lullaby would stay with her forever, a haunting reminder of the power of love and... The next morning, the villagers found Sophia by the riverbank. She was pale and visibly shaken. Her eyes held a depth of understanding that belied her tender years. They questioned her, eager to unravel the events of the stormy night. But Sophia remained silent. How could she explain what she had witnessed? How could she articulate the profound sorrow that emanated from La Llorona? They wouldn't understand. They would only see the legend, the monster. They wouldn't see the grief that bound her. Sophia carried the weight of that night. She carried the memory of La Llorona's lament, the echo of a mother's love and the terrible price of despair. Life in Santa Cecilia resumed its rhythm, yet the shadow of La Llorona loomed larger than ever. Her cries seemed to echo louder. The rustle of her gown seemed closer. The villagers lived in a perpetual state of unease. They were trapped between the world they knew and the chilling reality of the legend. Sophia never went near the river again. She had looked into the eyes of sorrow. She had witnessed the depths of a mother's despair. And in the weeping echo of La Llorona, Sophia heard a warning, a reminder that some wounds, some losses could never truly heal. They lingered like restless spirits, forever bound to the places where their hearts had shattered.